Hey guys, what's up? It's Justin, aka Diego. Let me scoot you closer to me and then tilt you up. Yeah. Gonna make another video, another webcam video, because what I want to talk about, there's not really anything I could do in game. I just kind of want to talk about vengeance. And I had this discussion with one of my fellow tanks in my guild today, briefly, but I wanted to just enlighten you guys on how I feel. And if you guys feel the same way, let me know. If you don't, if you think I'm in the wrong, you let me know. But basically, the current model for Vengeance, and ever since Vengeance was introduced, I've never been a fan of Vengeance. Ultimately, I would like to see Vengeance gone in all forms. I would like to see it just removed from the game, and I would like it just to be the old threat model. Just tanks had to threat and consistently threat, and DPS would always had a threat of pulling off of tanks. And why, you might ask? Well, basically because let me explain it like this: when you cut down to the basic fundamentals of what a tank has to do, okay, it's basically two things. Okay, it's make sure the boss or whatever is supposed to be attacked is attacking you and no one else, and make sure it's in the proper position that was assigned by your raid or whatever. So basically, that's the two fun. You're not supposed to heal yourself. That's the healer's job, and you're not supposed to kill the boss. That's the DPS's job. Your job is to make sure it attacks you, and to make sure that it's positioned properly, and not in a fucked up place where people can't do whatever the fuck they're supposed to do. So that's the two fundamentals of tanking when you go down to the core. And by introducing Vengeance, Blizzard basically took away one fundamental of tanking, right? They took away threat. It's very easy. Comparatively to the old models, it's way simple, and I just don't find it very fun. And I really don't think that I think that threat should always be an issue. I really think it should be. I don't think you should always have shit pulled off of you. That's balancing. But I really think Vengeance was Blizzard's lazy way of making them not have to deal with threat changes. They introduced Vengeance and they're like, all right, cool. Threat's good for the rest of fucking WoW. We're done. We don't ever have to address threat again. Maybe a threat modifier here or there, but because I don't know if you guys remember back in the day before Vengeance, there were things that had high threat modifiers. Shield of Righteousness is one of them. And other tanking abilities had their high threat modifiers. That's because you needed to do a lot of threat back in the day. And excuse me. And not only that, when Vengeance was introduced, threat was so easy. Blizzard basically, whether they intended to or not, but they basically gave every tank. Anyway, they made it easier for them to decide which way they wanted to gear. Basically, for progression, there's no need for any type of threat on any type of gear, because you can just max out survivability, you get a little bit of vengeance, and the boss is gonna stick to you like a fucking like glue. So Blizzard basically said, this is how you're gonna gear. You're gonna focus on survivability because we're giving you all the threat you need. I personally don't like that. I don't like Blizzard saying like, hey, you're gonna have to wear this gear. You should wear this gear. I like to be the person that says, you know what, I should wear this gear if I decide to wear this gear. You shouldn't tell me what the fuck I should wear. It's my character. I get to play the game however I want. Right? And so by introducing Vengeance, they basically just told us, hey, you should focus on survivability if you want to be a good progression tank, which is obvious, but I like there being room for play. I like there being like, hey, on this fight, I don't really need to worry about, the boss doesn't really hit that hard. I could switch on some threat gear to do a little bit more threat so the DPS doesn't pull off me. But now Vengeance is, ever since Vengeance was in the mix, it's like, why do I need to do more threat? It's like, so I could do 4K more DPS and the boss dies 20 seconds faster in 10 minutes? That's nothing. Who gives a shit about that? And that's another thing. Anyone who thinks that tanks should do more damage to kill the boss faster, it's literally, if you do like 4 or 5K more DPS in your threat gear as opposed to your progression gear, that kills the boss probably about 30 seconds faster. And that may sound like a lot, but it's depending on how usually on the fight length, like normal progression fight length, 8 to 10 minutes. 30 seconds really isn't a huge deal for how much more damage that you actually take. But I mean, that's another conversation. Threat gear really belongs in farm content. Doesn't belong in progression content. Anyone who wears threat gear in progression content either has healers that are fucking amazing, or healers that really don't have a voice to say, "Hey, bro, you're really straining my fucking mana pool because I'm dumping heals into you. Do you mind throwing out progression gear?" Anyway, another thing that before Vengeance, it was pretty easy to gauge the skill of a tank, right? Healers usually did it best. Healers could usually judge how good a tank was because they were predominantly healing tanks. So they would say, hey, he's using his cooldowns properly, he's standing in the right spot, he's doing his assignments properly, and he's obviously keeping threat. That was usually in the conversation somewhere. If you lost threat, everyone knew. It was obvious. The whole fucking raid knew that you couldn't keep threat. But now, I mean, it just comes down to two things. Is he using his cooldowns properly, and is he tanking where we told him to tank? Is he doing his assignments? I really like the third aspect of there being some sort of threat discussion. I mean, now it's non-existent. Now threat's so easy. And the fact that we don't have a DPS meter for tanks, we do, but we don't really do damage. Like I said, we're there. So I mean, you could go over damage taken. That could be like the tank damage, or the tank meter. But there's only one other tank, and you can't really compare that server wide because who's to say who was doing what job, and on some fights with ads, who's to say how many ads the guy was tanking, who was tanking more ads, so that always messes with damage taken. So you can't really go by damage taken, you can't really go by DPS because we're not DPS, and you can't really go by healing because we don't really heal ourselves a lot. So there's not really a clear-cut meter for us. The only meter before Vengeance that was a tank meter was a threat meter, because you could always tell which tank could do a shit ton of threat by taking a look at Omen. Add-ons like Omen right now don't really have a place in the game. I just don't know why, if they are keeping Vengeance in, why they just get rid of threat altogether. I mean, the reason why they haven't is because, trash and stuff. That would really be weird with a bunch of ads and like how's threat going to work with like 14 ads? It's just that's the only reason like they still have threat. But like on bosses, I mean, might as well just have threat just be a taunt. Once you taunt the thing, it's on you until the other guy taunts or whatever the fuck. I mean, that's literally how easy threat is, to me personally. I mean, it's a joke. And now, I don't know if you guys know this, in Mists of Pandaria, the Vengeance doesn't have a cap. They removed the cap on Vengeance. The Vengeance used to cap at 10%. Now it goes on indefinitely. How hard is that going to be? As the fight goes on longer, your threat's going to get higher and higher. It's dumb. It's a dumb way to just address a situation that I think that they are being lazy about. They really didn't. I don't think they like the extra work of having to balance each class, not only to make sure they're doing the same amount of damage, to make sure that they all were surviving about the same, and to make sure that they all could sustain themselves with cooldowns and healing and whatnot, and not be too overpowered this way, like Paladins, Art Defender back in the Lich King days. So I think they just didn't like, with all of those things, and then having to work on threat balances. Like, this guy's doing way more threat than this guy AoE wise, and blah blah blah, and this isn't doing that much damage for AoE, and it should, so we have to buff this. And basically what I'm saying is, I just think that they didn't like the extra work around threat balancing, so they just put Vengeance in, and then gave us a shit ton of threat damage on our threat modifier, Righteous Fury and whatnot. And they just said, okay, cool, we're done with threat. Now let's just address balance changes with survivability and blah, 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 blah. And I really think it's a piss poor way of making good tanks that had fun with threat tanking, because I loved doing a ton of threat. I loved actually having a threat rotation. And now, having an active mitigation rotation is pretty cool. I don't know if you guys know. The other tank talked about how using shield, talked about how every tank has a active mitigation rotation where you have to use certain abilities to get some sort of mitigation out of it. For us, it's Shield of Righteousness, us meaning Paladins. You get a damage reduction every time you use Shield of Righteousness for a couple seconds. But anyway, he said that's going to be a good way to gauge good tanks. I'm like, yeah, but you could still do that without Vengeance. You could still gauge good tanks. Like, okay, is he keeping threat? And is he using his damage mitigation rotation? It's that simple. I mean, Vengeance really should not be in the game. Am I wrong? You guys let me know. How do you feel about it? Because I personally feel that it could be out of the game, and it was more fun when you actually had to work for threat, and it wasn't just so, okay, here's 20k attack power, tanks. Don't worry about threat. Just keep yourselves alive. I don't find that gameplay as a tank fun. Maybe healers like it more because we just, fuck any type of DPS rotation. We just wog ourselves every fucking cooldown. But anyway, so you guys let me know what you guys think about it. If I'm in the wrong, you guys let me know. Try to, steer my head why Vengeance should be still in the game, because I don't think it should be. But that's what I feel. If you feel I'm right, help me get the word out. Maybe Blizzard will take a fucking second look at it, and you never know. Maybe they might completely change it. And I don't think it's gonna get. I don't think they're ever gonna take it out. But that's what I'm fucking hoping. I think it's bullshit. Thanks for listening to me ramble. Sorry I don't really have any gameplay footage for you. I'm pretty sure we'll be doing some gameplay stuff in the near future. But other than that, you guys have a good day. Hope you had a drink or two. See you later. Bye.